If anyone has seen my birth rate videos, you know that I'm on team let the birth rate plummet to hell. So when I saw this news article title, it definitely made my heart go pitter patter because the title says Alabama faces a demographic cliff as deaths surpass births. Demographic cliffs. So that sounds like plummeting to hell to me. So let's get into this article. Alabama has seen more of its residents die since 2020 than the number of newborns welcomed into the state's families over that same period. And while the state's population has continued to grow each year due to migration into Alabama, it's a worrisome statistic at a time when the state's policymakers are already concerned about the number of Alabamians who are not working and the ability of a new industry to fill jobs. That can prove to be a real economic challenge, said former state senator Greg Reed, who is advising Kay Ivey on workforce participation numbers. To be fair, a declining birth rate isn't a problem faced solely by Alabama. Demographers and statisticians are seeing birth rates globally plummeting in developing countries, and the effects are already being felt in parts of Europe. Last year, the world population passed the 8 billion mark, so it wouldn't seem to be much of an issue right now. But according to research, the global fertility rate has more than halved over the past 75 years, when around 5 children were being born to each female in 1950. That number was 2.2 children in 2021. More than half of the countries of the world were below the population replacement rate of 2.1 births per female as of 2021. Demographers say that nationally, deaths will overtake births in the United States by 2040, but Alabama is already there. Dr. Naisha Black, the director of demographics at the University of Alabama Center for Business and Economic Research, broke that news earlier this month, to the surprise of some, at the Alabama Economic Outlook Conference. People used to say in politics, it's the economy, stupid. Black said, now they can say it's the demographics, stupid. Now I want us to look at this graphic. We got the year, we have births, we have deaths, and then this last column is the births minus deaths. So you can see up here the in the 1990s, it was a pretty large gap between the births and the deaths. So the natural increase was, well, it started out like 24,000, 22,000, 23,000. It was pretty high. And then as you look going into the early 2000s, things are starting to shift a little bit towards the end, like 2006. You see that the deaths and the births, the natural increase is getting just a little bit smaller. So it's about 9,000 difference between 1990 and 2009. Now, you can start to see that the number of births and deaths are definitely still decreasing as you go into the 20 teens. So to where it starts out in 2020 at over 12,000. And then it keeps shrinking and shrinking until we get down to 2019, where births outnumber deaths just by 4,500. Now, we all know what happened in 2020. There was a pandemic. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Towards the bottom, you can see 2020, 2021, and 2022. Each of those years, deaths outnumbered births to the point where there was a decrease in population if we're just going off of births and deaths. 7,000 in 2020, almost 11,000 in 2021, and just over 4,000 in 2022. The only thing that was saving them was migration. And obviously, they need more people to come into that state to fill jobs and do that, work there, because there is an aging population in Alabama as well. To understand the problem, let's go back to 1990, when Alabama saw more than 63,000 babies born and recorded more than 39,000 deaths. That means the state population naturally increased naturally by more than 24,000. Births continued to rise as late as 2009, when Alabama had more than 64,000 births, a statistical high during that period, but deaths began to rise in the years after, with Alabama recording more than 50,000 deaths by 2013. The turning point was 2020, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, when Alabama had over 57,000 births, but over 64,000, close to 65,000 deaths. The following year saw the trend continue when the state saw more than 11,000 people die than were born. The trend has continued every year since. Okay, so you can't really see this graph. It's not super duper dark, but this is the number of deaths is going steadily up. It's climbing steadily up, and then there is a hill right here. It's a hill. It jumps, and then it starts coming. It looks like even if that wasn't that hump, it's still going up right there. So that is the number of deaths. The pandemic was the tipping point, Black said. Before the pandemic, deaths were increasing by about 1.1% a year. The flip to more deaths than births happened about 5 to 10 years earlier than it would have otherwise. Alabama's population exceeded 5 million in 2020, with the census last year estimating 5.1 million people calling the Yellowhammer State home. That means the state is making up the difference due to people moving in. That number is also keeping with a trend throughout the South. According to the Federal Reserve, the Southeast has grown 0.2 percentage points per year faster than the rest of the U.S. in economic performance numbers, including population. And since 2020, the region has doubled the number of people coming, largely due to quality of life and cost of living. But the falling number of births is an issue that will have some effect on Alabama's ability to attract industry in the future, former Commerce Secretary Greg Canfield said. Okay, so this is the number of deaths and births. At the bottom, this jagged line or these hash lines, these are the deaths right here with that little hump that I showed earlier. And this number right here, this line is the births. So you see the births were always higher than the deaths. You see, and then it crosses right here. Now there are more deaths than births in Alabama. It says, we definitely got to get more people participating in the labor force, Canfield said. Our population is a little older. We've got a population over the age of 65 that I think is higher than most of our peer southern states. According to the census, Alabama's percentage of the population over age 65 is 17.8%. A study by LendingTree last year found that Alabama ranked third among the states where people were least likely to work past retirement age. Why? Because the aforementioned low cost of living and quality of life. Reed, along with other state officials, is working to get Alabama's workforce numbers higher. Alabama's labor force participation rate for November remained unchanged at 57.6%, lower than the national rate of at 62.5%, and among the lowest in the nation. The rate is the percentage of people in the working age population who are employed or seeking jobs. Black said the aging population may explain why that number is so low. You hear, people just need to work. There are jobs out there, she said. The reality, though, is that when those workforce participation numbers were good, you had a generation of baby boomers out there who were of working age, engaged in the labor market. What is driving the declines is that our labor force is an aging population. About 70% of the decline in the labor force participation is due to aging, not the economic behavior of people simply not working. Companies have still had problems throughout the South satisfying labor needs. 7 years ago, when Mazda and Toyota decided to build its auto plant in Huntsville, it set an ambitious goal of filling 4,000 jobs. Ambitious, that is, given the number of expanding industries already locating in the Huntsville area and those labor participation numbers. It was an issue, and we knew it was going to be an issue, Canfield said. It took a lot of effort and collaboration with Mazda Toyota, the state, our entire workforce, programming, and locally. Huntsville really rose to the challenge. For the moment, jobs are continuing to fill statewide. Companies locating south are seeing a larger number of retirees seeking jobs, while workers aged 25 to 54 are attached to gig economy jobs that offer greater time and office flexibility. But you might ask, why is the birth rate declining, and why should we care if it is? Let's ask the second question first. As stated above, the nation's fertility rate has to be at least 2.1 children per woman to keep a population steady. According to the Centers for Disease Control, the birth rate has dropped in the United States to 1.6 births per woman, and that's across many demographic categories. Births are declining among teenagers, among the educated, lower and upper income, and in categories historically associated with higher birth rates, such as Hispanics, according to Pew Research. There is some good news. Alabama was 49th among the states in the rate of decline in its birth rate from 2001 to 2020, checking in at a decline of 5.5%. As to why fewer people are being born, there are several suggested reasons by researchers. Women are marrying later in life, and couples are choosing career over child rearing in their 20s, meaning fewer children can be born. The cost of raising a child can be a factor for low income families, while more affluent people may opt out to spend their time and money on themselves. Fewer teenagers are reporting having sex. Alabama is no longer a primarily agrarian economy where big families tend to split the farm work. Some researchers have even blamed falling birth rates on the rise of social media. If people are online more, they contend that is less time they could be spending making other people. They are literally blaming social media. I almost no, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. But we should care about a declining birth rate for several reasons. As Politico reports, Social Security could face serious shortfalls if there aren't enough workers paying into the system on a consistent basis. Fewer workers mean fewer people paying taxes, which could impact national and state budgets. Beyond simply filling jobs, there's also the potential effect on certain sectors of society. College enrollment of incoming freshmen at U.S. universities dropped by 5% last fall, according to the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. It's an issue that has garnered a name, the demographic cliff. Falling birth rates potentially mean smaller enrollments, less money coming in, and less qualified workers for high quality jobs. Now, this was a long article from AL.com. I'm going to stop it right here, but I am going to make another video that is piggybacking where we're talking about the college enrollment rates, because it says the college enrollment rates dropped by 5%. I was like, in which demographic did it fall the worst, or what made that up? So we're going to talk about college demographics in another video. So go ahead, chime in. Let me know what you think about this. Like I said before, and what we saw as far as the graph, births are now being outnumbered by deaths in Alabama, and people are coming to Alabama simply to work. I'm wondering how the rest of the country is going to shape up once we do get the birth rate numbers in. Join the conversation. Don't forget to like. So I was just doing this article, and it had mentioned that there had been a 5% drop in enrollment in college. And so that made me start looking at college enrollments. And we've talked about college enrollments before, but I came across this article and I came across another one. I'm going to take a little bit of both. So this one says, "Where are the men? A look at the higher education gender gap." I'm not doing this whole article. I just want to hone in on this first screenshot. It says gender inequality, for instance, has long been a major problem in many industries and, of course, historically in educational settings. Often these settings suffer from the under-inclusion of those who identify as women. However, there has been a unique shift in recent years, particularly in the realm of higher education. Currently, colleges and universities across the country are facing a major drop in enrollment and graduation rates of men. According to a Pew Research report in December of 2023, there are 1 million fewer American men aged 18 to 24 enrolled in college than there were in 2011, compared to a 200,000 fewer women in the same age range. So 1 million fewer men and 200,000 fewer women. So that explains the drop. It says the biggest decline occurred in four-year colleges in the U.S., where young men now account for only 42% of enrollees, down from 47% in 2011. Now I want to come to this essay. This was written by Richard Reeves and Will Secker. So Richard Reeves has a book out called Of Boys and Men. I've read that book. I've watched many of his interviews. So he put this out. This is called Degrees of Difference, Male College Enrollment and Completion. I'm doing more of this article than I did of that first one. He says, summary. Over the last several decades, multiple gender gaps have emerged in college enrollment and graduation rates across institution and degree types. In 2021, men received 42% of bachelor's degrees awarded in the United States, the lowest male share on record and approximately equal to the 43% of bachelor's degrees awarded to women in 1970. I want to point out that women historically faced discrimination in education and the workplace. Men have never faced education and job discrimination the way women have. I just will point that out because Richard Reeves does not speak on the discrimination factors. Women are 11 percentage points more likely to graduate from a four-year institution in 4 years and 7 percentage points more likely to graduate within 6 years. These disparities persist across racial groups and are the highest for Black and Hispanic students. Though the trends are not new, the continued growth of these disparities pose significant questions for administrators, policymakers, and students. Key takeaways. There are now 2.4 million more female than male undergraduates on U.S. campuses, 8.9 million women compared to 6.5 million men, a gap that is largely driven by stagnating male enrollment in four-year colleges. In 2022, women were 9 percentage points more likely to be enrolled in college in the fall following high school graduation, a gap that has steadily widened in recent decades. Men are also less likely to complete college than women. The four-year graduation rate at four-year institutions, for example, is 54% for female students compared to 43% for male students. I completed college in 4 years. Did you? Chime in. There are gender gaps in enrollment and graduation across all major racial groups, but the gender gaps are generally wider for Black and Hispanic men. So these are some graphs that talk about the falling male share of degree earners. And it starts in the year 1970 and it goes through the year 2021. So it starts, men had higher amount of degrees in associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, more than 50% in all of these. And then over here for the doctorates, they had, what is that, more than 75%. But all of these numbers had declined. I would like to point out, though, that Title IX was passed in 1972. Title IX of the Education Amendments was signed into law on June 23, 1972 by Nixon. Title IX is a federal civil rights law that protects people from sex-based discrimination in education programs that receive federal funding because women and girls were discriminated against as far as their education. So women were oppressed. So that's one of the reasons why men had the majority of the degrees. So as women were able to get into school and stay there without discrimination, that's the reason why their numbers dropped. But that does not explain why they decided to just stop enrolling. The male share could be lower because men are less likely to enroll in college or because they are less likely to finish college after enrolling, or both. Here we examine trends in both enrollment and completion. We show that the male share of students enrolling in college has declined dramatically and that male completion rates are persistently lower. Combined, these two gender gaps in both enrollment and completion cause the lower male share of degrees awarded. These patterns hold across racial groups and most institution types. This descriptive analysis underscores the need for further research to understand the key factors driving the decline in male higher education attainment, and crucially, to identify effective strategies for reversing this trend. So this is a graph that talks about men are less likely to go to college directly after high school. So remember, I just said that 1972 was the year that Title IX was passed. So over here in 1960, women were still being oppressed and didn't have the same opportunities here. So you see that the gap is there. It looks like this is right around 1972, probably. That's probably around 1972. Still more men going right after high school, but then you see the graphs are a little bit closer, a little bit closer. And now look, women are on top with the green. And now literally women are on top. Women have stayed on top ever since we passed them up. It looks like, when did we pass them? What is that, about 1990? The switch happened right there. So you can see that in the graph. So that's what happened. Women have just continued to go to college straight out of high school. In 2022, 57% of male high school graduates enrolled in college, compared to 66% of their female counterparts. While the percentage of women immediately in college has seen a steady increase, only recently stabilizing, the percent of men enrolling in college has been more stagnant. The rate of immediate college enrollment for men is the same in 2022 as it was in 1964. Rates also fell sharply in 2021, resulting in the widest gender gap in immediate enrollment since 1968, favoring women rather than men at 14.6 percentage points. Higher education enrollment rates lower for men of all races. So the light green is women, the dark green is men in all categories. So this is total, but in all categories, the female participation rate is much higher. All right, so this is Asian women clocking in at 64, Asian men 58. This is Black, 39% Black women in college, 33 Black men. Hispanic has the biggest gap, with Hispanic men at 27, Hispanic women at 39%, so that is the biggest gap. White women are at 46%, white men are at 36%. So that is how the percentage of race and gender are stacking up against each other. Gender gaps on campus. Given these trends in college enrollment rates, it's not surprising that there are many more women than men on campuses. In 2021, men accounted for 42% of total undergraduate enrollment. The male share is slightly higher among full-time students at 44% and slightly lower among part-time students at 40%. Mirroring the trend for degree conferral, the gender gap in college enrollment first emerged in the 1980s and has widened steadily since. Figure 4 shows the absolute number of male and female students enrolled in 4- and 2-year institutions. So males not only enroll in college less, they also complete less. So this is the gender gaps in completion are pervasive across race. So this is completion. This is total. I mean, obviously, you can see the light green is bigger than the dark green across the board. And so Richard Reeves is trying to figure out how they get to the root of the problem. I just wanted to show that women are out here kicking butt, because this is a feminist page and a feminist network. Women, keep pushing, keep pressing. Stop doing their work. Make them do their own work. Make them come up with their own solutions. We're not oppressing them. They haven't had historical oppression, and we're entering into different kind of political times. Anyways, let me know what you think of all this. Join the conversation. Don't forget to make them hold their own nuts, and like, comment, and share.